I called off my wedding while my fiancée was on vacation with her ex after she told me. It's just a trip between friends. Stop being so insecure and controlling. 5 weeks later, her phone call completely caught me off guard. Hi, I'm Mateo, 32. I work as a logistics analyst for a shipping company in Valencia, and my weeks are usually spreadsheets, port schedules, and late calls with people in other time zones. I'm not rich, but I'm steady, and I'm the type who pays bills early and keeps receipts. My fiancée is Laura, 29. We've been together 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and we rent a 2-bedroom apartment together. We split chores, and up until recently, I thought we split the stress pretty evenly too. The wedding was set for early summer. Not huge, about 70 people, but not cheap either. Laura wanted it to look expensive without being called expensive. She had opinions about everything, down to the thickness of the invitation paper and whether the chairs looked too basic in photos. I can handle opinions. What got old was the way she delivered them. Like every vendor was lucky she was even considering them. I agreed to take overtime because it felt cleaner than debt. My company was short-staffed, so overtime was basically unlimited if you were willing to live at your desk. I did it. Extra evenings. A couple Saturdays. I told myself it was temporary and it was for us. Laura said she appreciated it, but her actions were more like she appreciated the results. She'd ask what I made that week and then immediately bring up upgrades. Better flowers. A bigger bar package. A different photographer because the one we booked had a vibe issue. If I hesitated, she'd roll her eyes and say I was acting poor. At home, she was on her phone constantly, not in a normal scrolling way. More like quick tilts of the screen when I walked by, then bright smiling at something, then going flat when I asked what was so funny. She also started dressing up more for random errands. Full makeup to go pick up groceries. Perfume on a Tuesday afternoon when she said she was just meeting a friend for coffee. I didn't accuse her of anything because I didn't actually have anything, and I'm not interested in being the guy who interrogates his partner like a cop. But I started noticing patterns, and once you notice patterns, you either ignore them or you start keeping track. Last week, I came home after a 12-hour shift and saw her laptop open on the couch. A notification popped up and vanished fast, but I caught the name. Nico. I know that name because Nico is her ex. The one she calls toxic. The one she says she learned her lesson from. The one she promised she had blocked everywhere. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, and Laura walked in from the kitchen and snapped at me for hovering like a weirdo. I told her I was just tired, which was true. But now I can't stop thinking about why an ex who is blocked would be popping up on her screen at all. The next morning, I didn't bring it up. I made coffee, packed my lunch, and left like normal. Laura barely looked up from her phone. She asked if I could send her the login for the wedding venue portal because she wanted to double-check the seating chart again. Not because anything was wrong, just because she likes to circle problems until she invents one. At work I tried to focus, but my brain kept replaying that notification. Nico, a name that should not exist in our life anymore. Around midday, Laura texted me a list of things she wanted to upgrade. A different cake tasting because the one we tried was too plain. Linen napkins instead of paper. A photo booth because her cousin's wedding had one and it looked fun. I replied with a simple "we can talk tonight." She sent back a thumbs down emoji like I was her annoying employee. I got home late again. Laura was in the bedroom with the door mostly closed. Not fully shut, just enough to signal do not enter. I could hear her laughing, the kind of laugh she does when she is trying to impress someone. When I walked past, the laughing stopped. She opened the door a minute later and came out with that fake casual face. She told me she was on the phone with her friend B, and then immediately asked why I was looking at her like that. I said I wasn't. She shrugged and said whatever, and then asked if I had picked up the deposit receipt for the florist. I reminded her I paid it online last week. She rolled her eyes and said I know. I just like having paper copies because you forget things. That was a new thing too. Little jabs about my reliability while I was basically funding the whole production. After dinner, she took a shower and left her phone on the counter. I didn't grab it. I didn't need to. I'm not proud of the thought that came next, but I'm also not going to pretend I'm above it. I looked at her laptop again. I didn't open her messages. I didn't need to hack anything. She had left a tab open with her email, and there was a confirmation from a restaurant I recognized. Not one she and I ever went to. A reservation for two. The name on the reservation was Laura. The note said anniversary table if possible. Anniversary. I checked the date. It was for the next night, when she told me she was going to a work dinner. My stomach went cold, but my face stayed calm. I took a photo of the screen with my own phone. Then I closed the laptop exactly how I found it and went to the living room like nothing happened. When Laura came out of the bathroom, she was in a good mood. Too good. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if my overtime check hit yet. I said it would on Friday. She smiled and said, "Perfect. Then we can finally lock in the last payments and stop stressing." I nodded. Inside my head, something clicked into place. Not the dramatic kind. The practical kind. The kind that makes you start thinking in lists. Vendors. Deposits. Refund windows. What is cancelable and what is not? I didn't confront her that night. I just let her talk about chair covers and lighting while I quietly decided I was not going to marry someone who had an anniversary dinner booked with her ex behind my back. The next day, I worked like normal, but I paid closer attention to the clock than usual. Lara's reservation was for 8 in the evening. She had told me the work dinner started around 7. Around 6:30, she texted me that she would probably be late because her team decided to try a new place across town. She added a laughing emoji and said, "Wish me luck surviving 3 hours of office gossip." I replied with a simple thumbs up. Then I opened the photo I took of her laptop the night before. The restaurant was not across town. It was 15 minutes from our apartment. That detail mattered to me more than the cheating itself. Cheating is already bad. Lying badly while doing it is worse. I finished my shift and drove home instead of heading toward the restaurant. I wanted to see what she did when she thought nobody was watching. At 7:15, I parked down the street from our building. Our apartment windows faced the road, and the living room lights were on. At 7:25, the front door opened, and Laura walked out. Work dinner Laura looked very different from the Laura I saw that morning. She was wearing the red dress she usually saves for weddings and formal events. Full makeup, hairstyled. The perfume she only uses when she wants attention. She checked herself in the reflection of her phone screen before locking the door. Then she walked toward the corner and called a ride. No hesitation. No rushing. She looked excited. I waited about 10 minutes before starting the car. Not because I was trying to follow her like a detective. Honestly, I just wanted confirmation that my brain was not inventing a story out of a single email. The restaurant was easy to find. Valencia is not a giant city, and the place was popular enough that the outside tables were almost full. I parked across the street and waited. At 8 on the dot, Laura stepped out of a car and walked toward the entrance. A man was already standing there. I recognized him instantly, even though I had only seen photos before. Nico. He looked exactly like the type Laura used to complain about. Good hair, tight shirt, the kind of smile that works on people who want to be impressed. They didn't greet each other like distant acquaintances. They hugged the kind of hug that lasts a little too long for people who supposedly hate each other. Then they went inside together. I sat in the car for about 5 minutes after that. Not angry, not shaking, just very calm. Because at that point the situation was simple. My fiancée had an anniversary dinner with her ex while I was working overtime to pay for the wedding she kept upgrading. So I drove home and started opening every wedding contract we had saved on my computer. Most people think the worst moment is catching someone cheating. For me, it was the quiet hour after. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started opening contracts. Venue, catering, photographer, flowers, DJ, rentals. Each one had its own terms about deposits and cancellation windows. The venue was the biggest one. 30% paid up front. Another 20% due 2 months before the date. We were still just inside the window where the second payment had not been processed yet. That mattered. I made a simple list on paper. Vendor name, deposit amount, refund policy, cancellation contact. It felt weirdly similar to work. Just a problem with numbers and deadlines. Around 9:30, Laura texted me. She said the work dinner was dragging and she might grab a drink after with the team. She added a tired emoji like she was suffering through it. I looked at the message for a few seconds, then put the phone down. 10 minutes later, I emailed the venue coordinator. I kept it short and professional. Personal circumstances. Wedding canceled. Please confirm refund amount based on the contract terms. Next was the photographer. Their deposit was non-refundable, but the date could be released if notice was given early enough. I sent the same message. Catering was a partial refund situation depending on timing. We were still far enough out that it was mostly safe. By the time I finished the third email, my brain had fully switched into logistics mode. I wasn't thinking about Laura sitting in that restaurant laughing with her ex. I was thinking about how much money I could recover before anything became final. At 10:15, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Laura. She asked if I could transfer €2,000 from our joint savings to the wedding account because the decorator needed confirmation for upgraded lighting. That message actually made me laugh. Not loudly, just a quiet short laugh that surprised even me. While she was having an anniversary dinner with Nico, she was still actively spending my overtime money on the wedding she apparently didn't take seriously enough to stay loyal for. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I opened the decorator contract and checked the cancellation clause. Non-refundable once final design approval is submitted. I logged into the vendor portal and saw that Laura had already approved the upgraded lighting package earlier that afternoon. Of course she had. At that point, the last piece of doubt disappeared. This wasn't confusion or mixed feelings or some emotional mistake. This was someone fully comfortable living two different lives at the same time. So I finished sending the rest of the cancellation emails. Then I logged into the wedding website and changed the password. Once the emails were sent and the website password was changed, the apartment felt unusually quiet. Not peaceful, just empty in a practical way, like a place you already know you are about to leave behind. I looked around the living room and realized something simple. Almost everything in the apartment was mine. The lease was in my name because my credit was stronger. The couch was mine from before we moved in together. The TV, the kitchen table, even most of the cookware came from my old place. Laura had brought clothes, cosmetics, decorations, and a collection of plants that she regularly forgot to water. So the next logical step felt obvious. I started gathering her things. Not in an angry way. No throwing or dramatic gestures. I grabbed 2 of the large storage boxes from the closet and carried them into the bedroom. Her side of the closet was easy. Dresses first, shoes second, handbags after that. I folded what made sense to fold and laid the rest flat. The boxes filled faster than I expected. While I worked, my phone buzzed again. Laura sent a photo of a cocktail. The caption said Team Survival Drink. The restaurant logo was visible on the napkin in the corner of the picture. The same restaurant from the reservation. She either didn't notice it or didn't care enough to crop it. I didn't reply. Instead, I moved to the bathroom and cleared half the cabinet. Makeup bags, hair tools, skincare bottles that cost more than my weekly groceries. Everything went into another box. The whole process took about an hour. By the time I finished, 4 boxes were stacked neatly by the front door. I also added the small decorative things she liked. Picture frames she bought. The throw pillows she insisted made the couch look less depressing. The framed wedding invitation sample she had hung in the hallway 2 weeks ago. Seeing that one almost made me pause. Almost. I took it off the wall and placed it on top of the boxes. Then I sat down at the kitchen table again and opened my laptop. The venue coordinator had already replied. Cancellation confirmed. Deposit partially refundable minus administrative fee. That single email saved me almost 6,000 euros. I leaned back in the chair and looked at the stack of boxes near the door. Laura still thought she was out having a fake work dinner while her fiancé waited at home. What she didn't know was that by the time she came back tonight, there would be no wedding left to come home to. Laura came home a little after midnight. I heard her outside the door first. The quiet clacking of her heels in the hallway, then the sound of keys in the lock. I was still sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, exactly where she had left me earlier that evening. When she walked in, the first thing she noticed was the boxes. 4 of them stacked neatly beside the door. Her coats folded on top. The framed wedding invitation sitting right at the front. She froze for about 2 seconds. Then her face twisted into irritation instead of confusion. She asked what the hell this was supposed to be. I told her calmly that I packed her things so she could take them tonight. That's when the attitude kicked in. She dropped her purse on the counter and started talking fast, the way she does when she thinks she can bulldoze a conversation. She said I was being dramatic. She asked if this was about her being late. She said normal people don't pack someone's belongings like a psycho just because of a work dinner. I didn't argue. I turned my laptop toward her and showed her the reservation confirmation email. Her eyes moved across the screen for maybe 2 seconds before she looked away. Then she rolled her eyes. Not panic. Not guilt. Just annoyance. She said Nico was just someone she ran into recently, and they decided to catch up. She said the anniversary note was probably something the restaurant added automatically. She said I was overreacting and embarrassing myself. I listened to the whole speech without interrupting. When she finished, I told her I had already canceled the wedding. That was the first moment she actually looked shocked. Her eyebrows went up and she asked what I meant by canceled. I explained it slowly. Venue, catering, photographer, website, everything. For the first time that night, she stopped talking. Then she asked the only question she seemed to care about. What about the deposits? I told her some were refundable, some were not. But the bigger point was that there wasn't going to be a wedding anymore. Her expression changed again, this time into pure anger. She said I had no right to make that decision without her. I reminded her that I was the one paying for most of it while she was out celebrating an anniversary with her ex. The apartment went very quiet after that. Laura looked at the boxes again. Then she laughed in this short, sharp way and said I was acting like a jealous child. I shrugged and told her the boxes were ready whenever she wanted to take them. Laura didn't move toward the boxes. Instead, she crossed her arms and leaned against the counter like she was preparing for an argument she thought she could win. She said I was blowing something small into a huge problem. She repeated that Nico was just someone she met for dinner. She said adults are allowed to have conversations with people from their past. Then she added that if I wasn't so paranoid and controlling, I would understand that. That part didn't land the way she expected. I told her calmly that adults are also allowed to end engagements when their partner lies to their face. She scoffed and asked what lie I was even talking about. So I reminded her. She said work dinner. She sent a photo pretending to be with coworkers. She told me the place was across town. Meanwhile, she was dressed for a date at a restaurant 15 minutes away, meeting the one ex she claimed she had blocked everywhere. Laura waved her hand like I was listing minor inconveniences. She said it wasn't a big deal and I was embarrassing myself by acting like a detective. Then she asked if I had followed her. I said yes. That made her shake her head like she was the reasonable one in the room. She said, "Wow, so now you're stalking me too." I didn't bother reacting to that. Instead, I told her something simple. If she had told me earlier that she wanted to reconnect with Nico, I would have ended the relationship immediately and saved us both months of planning. But she didn't do that. She let me work overtime to pay for a wedding while she scheduled anniversary dinners with someone else. Lara's expression hardened. She said I was twisting the situation and acting like a victim. She said nothing even happened between her and Nico. I nodded and told her that didn't actually change anything. Because the kind of person who sets up secret dinners with their ex while planning a wedding isn't someone I'm interested in marrying. Another long silence followed. Finally, she looked at the boxes again and asked where exactly she was supposed to go at midnight. I told her that part wasn't complicated. Nico seemed like a good starting option. For a moment, I thought Laura might argue again. Instead, she let out another short laugh, grabbed her phone, and walked straight to the door. Her movements were sharp and annoyed, like she was the one inconvenienced by the situation. She pointed at the boxes and asked if I seriously expected her to carry all of that alone. I told her I'd help bring them downstairs. Not because I felt generous, just because I wanted the situation finished quickly. Neither of us said much while we moved the boxes. The hallway was quiet and the elevator ride was even quieter. Laura kept tapping on her phone the entire time, probably messaging someone. When we reached the building entrance, a ride was already pulling up to the curb. That answered the question of where she planned to go. We placed the boxes near the car. The driver stepped out and opened the trunk. Laura shoved the smaller bags in first and then turned back toward me. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain anything. She just shook her head like I was the unreasonable one. Then she said I would regret overreacting like this once I calmed down. I told her I wouldn't. She rolled her eyes one last time and climbed into the car. The driver closed the trunk, got back behind the wheel, and the car pulled away. That was it. No dramatic scene. No shouting in the street. Just a quiet car disappearing down the road with 4 boxes and my now former fiancé inside. I stood there for a few seconds, mostly because the street felt strangely empty after the door closed. Then I went back upstairs. The apartment already felt different. Not better exactly, just clearer. I walked into the bedroom and noticed the closet looked half the size it did earlier that evening. First thing I did was sit on the couch and open my phone. Laura had already sent 3 messages. The first said I was insane. The second said we needed to talk like adults. The third said canceling the wedding without discussing it was financial abuse. I read them once. Then I blocked her number. After that, I blocked her on every app we used. Messages, social media, even the shared wedding planning group chat. The silence that followed was immediate. For the first time that entire day, there were no notifications, no arguments waiting to happen, no explanations expected from me. Just quiet. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because of stress or some dramatic emotional spiral. My brain was just already running through the practical aftermath. First thing I did was check my email. A few more vendor replies had come in overnight. The photographer confirmed the date had been released. Catering acknowledged the cancellation and explained the refund schedule. The DJ sent a short message saying they understood and hoped everything worked out. No drama, just business. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table again, going through everything one by one. Refunds, remaining balances, accounts that needed to be closed. It felt a lot like cleaning up after a project that got canceled halfway through. Around 9 in the morning, I started getting messages from people who weren't blocked. Lara's cousin messaged first, then one of her friends, then my own sister. Apparently, Lara had already started telling people that the wedding was suddenly canceled and that I had thrown her out of the apartment in the middle of the night. I wasn't surprised. People like Lara move fast when they want to control the narrative. My sister called me instead of texting. She asked if everything was okay and what actually happened. I told her the short version. I said Lara had dinner with her ex while pretending she was at a work event and that I canceled the wedding when I found out. My sister was quiet for about 2 seconds before saying, "Yeah, that sounds about right." She had never fully trusted Lara. Not because of anything dramatic, just small personality things that always rubbed her the wrong way. After the call ended, I sent a short message to both families in the wedding group chat. Nothing emotional, just facts. I wrote that the wedding had been canceled due to personal circumstances and that vendors had already been notified. I apologized for the inconvenience and thanked everyone who had planned to travel. Then I left the group. About 20 minutes later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because sometimes vendors call from random lines. It was Lara. Not directly. She was using someone else's phone. The moment I heard her voice, I hung up and blocked that number too. Whatever she wanted to say at that point didn't matter anymore. The wedding was already gone. The apartment was quiet again. And for the first time in months, I didn't have to calculate how many extra hours I needed to work to keep someone else happy. The rest of that week settled into a strange kind of normal. Work stayed busy, which honestly helped. Logistics doesn't pause because your personal life collapses. Ships still arrive. Schedules still break. Someone still needs to figure out where containers are supposed to go next. During lunch breaks, I finished closing out the wedding situation. Most vendors were professional about it. The venue processed the partial refund. Catering confirmed the remaining balance was canceled. The photographer released the date without any issue. In total, I lost some money, but far less than I would have if I had waited another month. That alone confirmed I made the decision at the right time. Lara tried a few more ways to reach me during the first couple days. A second unknown number called once. An email came through from an address I didn't recognize that was clearly hers. The message said we needed to talk like adults and that I was destroying 3 years over nothing. I didn't respond. I blocked the email and moved on. A few days later, one of our mutual friends sent me a short message. Not gossip exactly, just an update. Apparently, Lara was already publicly back in contact with Nico. They had been seen together twice that week. According to the friend, Lara was telling people that the wedding ending was probably for the best because we were never really compatible anyway. That didn't bother me. If anything, it simplified things. Because it meant the version of the story she wanted people to believe was already drifting away from reality. Meanwhile, my reality was simple. The apartment was quieter. My schedule went back to normal hours instead of constant overtime. The money that used to go into a wedding fund stayed in my own account. About 2 weeks later, I took down the last leftover piece of the wedding planning. A folder on my laptop labeled June Wedding. I looked at it for a second, then deleted it. No anger. No big emotional moment. Just a finished decision. Looking back, the part people keep asking me about is why I didn't argue more or try to work it out. The honest answer is simple. Once someone is comfortable lying to your face while you are building a future together, the future is already gone. All I really did was stop pretending it was still there. Bye-bye.